What's up, Nate?
What's going on, man? Another great week, right?
Yeah. Well, let's get to it. Let's go cereal this week. Tell our fans, what is your favorite cereal?
Man,
We're just kind of,
listen,
the Kelseys are like our role models in this because they get paid
right?
a jack ton of money to do this.
Yeah, eventually our $20 million contract's coming, right? Yeah,
so when we get our own, develop our own cereal, I just kind of want to know which way do you lean?
Dude, it's not going to play well with a lot of other ones, but it's Raisin Nut Brand. Dude, it's so good, man. It is so. I don't eat a lot of cereal. My wife, she is a cereal-holic. It's ridiculous how much cereal we go through in our house. Like, those nights you have those conversations with your spouse, like, hey, what's for dinner? I don't care. What do you want? I don't care. And I'm like, listen, I'm not picking. Just tell me what you want. I go get it. And she's like, I'll just eat a bowl of cereal. Like that. Like,
I'm okay with that. I don't mind that. But
whatever.
I do mind your choice, but
dude,
that's
it's
okay.
so good. It's so good. I don't even want to hear it. Raisin Nut Brand. Do you even know what I'm talking about?
It's terrible.
Do you know the cereal?
I mean, that sits in our house. I mean,
it's not Raisin Brand. Raisin Brand sucks.
I understand.
This stuff
has
got
the extra coating.
Yeah, that's so good.
No, that's it.
Oh, you're so whatever. It's delicious.
All right, then.
Another edition of the Varsity Locker Room coming up now.
Yeah.
Week 6 is behind us, buddy. It was a wet, wild, nasty Friday night.
It's kind of a bummer when they had their homecoming events too. A lot of people had homecoming events. So I know Bluffton had their homecoming events. I'm sure they didn't have anything going on with that. But, it was brutal. I mean, whatever. It's Ohio. That's what we get.
Hey, finally, what everybody's saying, finally football weather, right?
Football. Yep. It's kind of weird too because you're stuck layering up. Like I layered up and it's still muggy.
Well, that's exactly what me and my wife were talking about. We're sitting in the stands and it's like normally it's not. We just put a bunch of layers on and you stay dry underneath and it's fine. But it was like 70 outside. So like you're sweating as you're getting, it was a weird night. Yeah. But we'll jump right into it. Speaking of where you were, our Fricker Lima game of the week for week 5 or week 6, was LCC at Bluffton. I know this was a tough one for you.
Pirates rolled, man. No, I mean, my oldest son had a little bit of an injury and kind of rehabbed all week. Wasn't able to play much of that game. But let's give the Pirates all the credit. I mean, they had 409 yards of total offense. QB Giesing, four rushing TDs. He had 16 carries for 165 yards. Senior Landon Worcester was the homecoming king. He had 70 yards rushing on 15 carries. Sophomore Spencer Lavelle, 13 carries, 76 yards. Stackhouse had 1 catch for 60 yards and a TD. Pirates were averaging 6.8 yards per carry. And they only threw for 89 yards because they didn't have to.
Well, if you look across the entire slate, not a whole lot of passing anywhere in the elements.
I got one school that kind of surprised me they threw, but yeah. The only thing that didn't work for the Pirates were their lights.
It was crazy because some WOSN guys were there as well, and they're texting, lights are out here. I think Elida had some power issues. Elida had to evacuate the field at one point. But they said it went out, I think twice, right?
Yeah, twice. And they have the old school lights. There's a good light rep. My buddy Jason Rice would sell them some halogens if they want, but they have the old school ones where it's 20 minutes to get back up and running. So, but yeah, Pirates in total control. Really, that QB read really gave LCC fits. To be honest with you, they had a tough time keeping him inside. First drive, 4th and 12. He keeps it, goes around on the end, and LCC kid missed a tackle. Long story short, Bluffton, nothing really to comment from LCC side. They got a lot to work on. I got punched in the mouth multiple times, and Bluffton deserves all the credit. So, it was game of the week on paper. However, in person, all Bluffton.
Yeah, not so much. And, everybody knew coming in, at least we thought we did. 3-team race, right? LCC, Bluffton, Columbus Grove. Bluffton holds up their end of the bargain. They're going week 10 against Columbus Grove. Yeah. That matchup is looming. However, LCC still might have something to say about all this. Couple of weeks, the T-Birds take on the Bulldogs. Hopefully, Matthew is fully healthy for that matchup. We're going to talk more about Grove and Barraza and everything that they do a little bit later. But that's in the, coming up very quickly for LCC. So a couple of weeks to kind of fix things that, really got highlighted against the Pirates.
Yep, absolutely. Learning how to, you're going to have to keep contain. They have to break down and make tackles. But again, for me, I just want to keep emphasizing Bluffton played a heck of a football game from start to finish. The T-Birds did have one stop, and they came out at half and down 21-0 and just total control. So hats off. Great place to play. It was fun to be back in that little environment. Would have loved, obviously, to have the bigger crowds and everything with that, but very, very fun and exciting, and good for them. They're on a roll, brother.
All right, moving on to week 7 game of the week.
Yeah,
and we go back to a little bit of a familiar team. The second time they've made our game of the week. That is the Bath Wildcats. They're going to travel over to Salina. They're our Frickers-Lima game of the week. Frickers-Lima, where now for the fall season, stop by and get select appetizers half price after 9 p.m. They are perfect for after ball games, practice, or to end a long work day. And this game, I don't know that a lot of people would have had circled for week 7, a big game in the Western Buckeye League, but it really is. Bath comes in with just the one conference loss. Salina has 2, really can't afford any more if they want to keep themselves up towards the front end of the WBL.
Correct.
Salina, they come in as the 9-point favorite. They lead the all-time series 29-22-1.
Lots of history.
Yeah. I mean, lots of history, but a lot of one-sided history here recently. Bath has only beaten Salina twice since 2004. Wow. However, one of those victories did come just 2 years ago. So there are guys on that team that know what it's like to beat Salina. And sometimes I think that can get lost in the shuffle when guys have been around, they've beaten a team, especially when you've struggled against it. It helps to kind of be like, hey, this team isn't somebody that is like this infallible team that we have no chance against. We can beat them, and we've done it recently. Bath lost last week. This was an upset. Maybe not an upset in the sense that Ottawa Glandorf won, but maybe in the way that they lost. Bath, they came in with the top scoring offense in the Western Buckeye League. They were averaging 42 points per game. They get shut out by the Titans 26-0. OG, they just drew up a perfect game plan. Now, I read some things. There wasn't a lot out there as far as stats and stories of the game. It was kind of hard to find some things, but I did talk to a few people.
Reporters didn't want to be there either.
Yeah. I did talk to a few people who said that the weather was the ultimate equalizer, right? And I don't know if that so much is the case. I wasn't there. However, seeing Bath as many times as we've had and how their team offense seems to run, everything is based off of being able to pass the ball.
Yep.
If you can't pass, it doesn't allow their run offense to get going because they play that 5 wide. Well, if you're Ottawa Glandorf and you're like, well, we're not worried about you throwing the ball that much because of the weather, we can sell out on the run and shut them down. And that at least appears to be what they did.
And honestly, it's kind of like we saw, at the LCC, like we were talking about, the bottom line is if you can't do both and you can't do it consistently, I mean, you're living in Ohio. Yeah. I mean, in a few weeks here, this could be an issue. So,
absolutely.
I think it really gives an opportunity to kind of lean into what you do well and what you need to improve on here as you move into the second half of the season.
So moving on to Salina, they also took a loss last week. They lost to an Elida team 17-14 after giving up 17 unanswered points to the Bulldogs. Isaac Jones of Elida, he made a 30-yard field goal midway through that fourth quarter to break a 14-14 tie.
It's like and the Bulldog defense.
Yep, they held on. They sealed that victory. Salina's John Lutz led the way for Salina as he had 19 carries, 147 yards, and 2 touchdowns. Not a lot going on in the air for Salina, which that'll pretty much be a theme as we cover all of the last week's games. Last year's game between these two teams was a shootout. Salina won that one 52-36, but Bath, they had some success moving the ball. Zach Welsh threw it for 2 touchdowns. He rushed for 2 more. Mikey Hale rushed for 142 yards and a touchdown. They were having success. Salina's Bobby Morris, 5 of 7 for 111 yards. Other than that, the rest of the offense from last year's game, they're gone. They graduated. Okay. Everybody kind of knows that story with Salina. They've done a nice job, though, being able to find that, especially with John Lutz. But the real difference in last year's game was special teams and turnovers. Salina had an 85-yard kickoff return for a touchdown, and the defense forced 3 Bath turnovers, 2 interceptions, and a fumble.
Big momentum swingers.
In a game that has that many points, those 3 turnovers loomed large, and that really was the difference in that game. So coming into this season, that Bath remembers that. They know that. They've got to do a better job of holding on to the ball, and I think they will. They come into this one. They are the number 2 team in the WBL in passing yards, just around 300 yards per game. They're number 2, in total offense, 478 yards per game. And even with getting shut out, they are still the top scoring offense in the Western Buckeye League, averaging 35 points per game.
And just so you know, it's supposed to be 79 degrees. And
it's going to be a beautiful weekend for sure.
Weekend.
On the other side, Salina, they're the number 2 rushing team in the conference. They get 250 yards per game, led by John Lutz and Bobby Morris. They're 4th in total offense, 357 yards per game. They are 4th in scoring offense with just over 30 points per game. They are next to last in passing, but it's not because they're bad at it. It's just because they don't have to do it, right?
Morris going to be a barn burner again, or is it going to?
I'm telling you what, buddy. I think that this one we talked about last year's. It was a shootout. I think you're looking at another shootout. Salina's offense is able to get things going. The Bath defense, not so great. We know what that Bath offense can do when it gets on a roll, when Zach Welsh has some time. I think that we got another very, very high-scoring Western Buckeye League matchup on our hands this week.
Well, that's why it's game of the week, bro.
Hey, I'll tell you what, and, we're into week 7. It is looming large, the end of this regular season. Every game matters a little bit more the closer and closer we get to week 10. This is one of those ones, both these teams need wins. Salina has to win if they want any chance of defending that conference title, which is still, that's a outside shot, but they can't have a second loss. Bath, they control their own fate. The way that their schedule lines out, if they win out, they are guaranteed at least a co-championship. So this is a big matchup when it comes to the conference standings for sure.
Well, that's why it's game of the week. It's going to be exciting. Don't forget to get out the Frickers after the game and go check this one. Get over to Salina and have a good time.
All right, before we move on, as we do every week, let's get a little prediction here. How do you see this one playing out?
Man, I'm having a tough time, taking the weather out of my brain when I was doing this.
I know.
But I'm leaning towards Salina in this one. Now, when it comes, if you're taking spread out of it, I'm leaning towards Salina. But that's where I'm at.
So I think I agree with you only in the sense that I think that both offenses can score a lot of points. So this is going to come down to defense. And I think Salina has the better defense. And so ultimately, you need your defense to come up with stops when it matters the most. I think the Salina Bulldogs will have a better chance of doing that. And so I think when it's all said and done, Salina comes away with this victory. I agree with you.
All right, brother. We're going to move on to the conference rundown. This is brought to you by Stallion Insurance, looking out for you and your family for over 100 years. Top-tier agents who treat you with respect and get you the answers you need when you need them. Let's hit the recap. We'll start at the NWC. Columbus Grove versus Allen East. 38
Barraza, baby.
38-13. Barraza had 25 carries, 308 yards, 4 TDs. Kyle Hopkins, their next new quarterback.
Third one so far. I think actually the 4th guy that's taken snaps at QB for them.
Yeah, I heard they actually had a little prayer for the quarterback, kind of no joke, literally start praying for the quarterback before the games because they're just hey, we need to keep a guy back there. He had 97 yards, threw for a TD. Trevin Baxter had 4 catches, 65 yards for a TD. Allen East, Keegan Jones was 13 of 25, 96 passing yards. Jack Thompson did have a scoop and score for the Mustangs from 43 yards out. I think Barraza really dictated the game here. And obviously, if you've been to Allen East and watched them play, they really need to move the ball around. Their offense really relies on that movement. So I could see where it was going to be a struggle for them.
Well, and, that's Keegan Jones. That was his first start as well. Allen East having to make some changes. It's not. I thought that they had an injury.
He played against LCC.
Okay, so maybe a second start then.
Yeah,
so, they're still breaking in a new quarterback as well.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. When you got a player like Trent Barraza, though, and where that they're just going to hand the ball and run it to him, and what the offense is, and you just can't stop. It's not like St. Mary's where it's kind of a 3-headed monster over there. Columbus Grove, it's one guy. Yeah. We're going to give the ball to him. This is what he's going to do, and you still can't line up and stop it. That's a special player for sure.
Yep. Well, and I'm sure he's probably going to give a little credit to his offensive line.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
We were over. I saw Caleb Mays. He was over at Ashland on Saturday. He's a big fella. He creates a lot of holes for his good buddy Barraza. All right, next up we have Crestview, who is now 3-3 as they took care of Jefferson. Huxley Gross, the new QB caller for the Knights, was 5-9 for 94 yards and a TD. Braxton Leith had 13 carries, 121 yards, 2 TDs. Liam Putnam, 3 catches, 78 yards, and a TD. Cash Hammonds had 30 yards, an interception, and he returned it for a TD. So I had a bunch of Crestview stats. I did not have much for Jefferson. I read the article from the Delphus Herald. Pullman was staying real positive. He's just screaming, or not screaming. He's coaching consistency, and really excited about the opportunity to play LCC next week. And he's just keep getting these kids exposure. I thought he just did a really nice job on the paper of not, sometimes, I mean, it gets that you're halfway through the season, and, I played for some pretty, what do you say, real or negative, however you want to interpret that, coaches. It can get kind of wearing. It's taxing. I mean, these guys put their life into this a lot of times. So, Coach was staying very positive. I'm sure he's very excited to get things turned around and just, get everybody back on the winning track. Fort Loramie and Spencerville next up in the NWC. Fort Loramie 42, Spencerville 21. Hart threw for 3 TDs. Horning ran for 2 TDs. Wide receiver Maurer had all 3 TD of the all 3 of those TD receptions. Fort Loramie jumped on Spencerville early, 35-0 at half, but not so fast. The Bearcats came back, and I didn't have a bunch of how they did it, but Carter Orr finished with a TD. He did have 1 pick, and the Bearcats ran for 2 more. What I would say about that when I was reading that article, Nate, is you're not giving up.
Exactly.
You literally get halfway through the season, and this is a team that I've dug in a little bit too on Pasture site. They have 1 more win. They're like 90% in. I don't know if that's dictating to their region. I would assume if you only have 4 wins.
Yeah. So it's not the toughest region in the world, but look, because I think they got in last year with less wins than that.
Okay.
But a lot of it has to do with the expanded playoffs, too, right? Like
if
your region only has 18 teams and 16 of them go, right? Like that stuff can happen. But they're in the middle of a turnaround. They're not that far removed from being 0-10. They got a new coach. It's his second year. They're fighting, and I think you're right. This is a great indication of how mentally tough this team is. That you go into the locker room down 35-0, and you come out with some fight. A lot of teams would just come out and be like, "It's a running clock. Let's get out of here in 24 minutes."
Especially in that weather.
100%.
Yep. All right, man, let's hit the WBL.
Time to take a look at the Western Buckeye League, starting first with St. Mary's at Van Wert. St. Mary's dominated the second half, and they turned a 14-14 tie into a 49-14 victory. Yeah, Van Wert has actually had the lead in the second quarter. They were up 14-7 before St. Mary's tied it, but then a 35-0 second half ended up being the difference in this one. The big deal for St. Mary's, they scored 4 touchdowns in under 5 minutes. They were able to get a couple of turnovers. Yeah, short fields. They punched it in, and that really seized the momentum for them, especially in that fourth quarter. Colton Mayberry led the St. Mary's with 126 yards on 19 carries and 2 touchdowns. Dominic Osborne had 15 rushes for 123 yards and 2 touchdowns, and Caleb Smith added 10 rushes for 81 yards and a touchdown. Van Wert, no surprise, they were led by QB Briston Wise. He hasn't had a ton of success in the air here lately. And this week, you can't really blame him considering what everybody had to play in. He ended up with 30 carries, 207 yards, and 2 touchdowns.
Big stats.
But either way, St. Mary's, they moved to 2 games above 500. Van Wert scuffling right now. They've lost 5 straight. They are trying to get things turned around. We already talked about Bath, at least what they did on their side of the game against Ottawa Glandorf. For OG, Grant Evers, he led the Titans with 3 rushing touchdowns.
Boom.
They get to 500, and they're trying to ride the conference's top defense to wins, and it is working. That defense, even in a loss 2 weeks ago to St. Mary's, that defense had a perfect scheme. They shut down the run from St. Mary's. Coach Reiner's doing a tremendous job with those guys. They are playing very, very good football.
Stuff. We know how winning goes over there in Ottawa.
As we mentioned, I was unfortunately out at the Shawnee game getting drenched. The undefeated Wampanoag Redskins did not make it an easy night for the Indians. Shawnee, they did keep it close. It was only 7-0 at halftime, and that was after they lost their starting quarterback in the first quarter to injury. So they did a very good job of not folding under the pressure. They played with Wapak. But then the second half, Caleb Moyer, Jarrett Mullins, and Caden Page got going. They scored 21 more points to make it a 28-0 final. Moyer, a very, very efficient 11 of 13 for 195 yards. He rushed 16 times for 82 yards and 2 touchdowns.
Stats in the win.
Yeah, and the thing I liked about Moyer, and this is the first time I had a chance to watch him. He can step into a throw. He doesn't float things, even on deep passes. They are on a line. They're at the right height. He can hit his wide receivers in stride, and even when he's checking down, he hits them out in front, so they have a chance to just catch it and keep going with their momentum. They don't have to like stop and let the defense catch up. And when you only have 2 incompletions in a night like Friday night, I mean, you can't say enough good stuff about the kid. Jarrett Mullins had 10 carries for 110 yards and 2 touchdowns. He also had 4 catches for 74 yards. And then Caden Page added 6 catches for 121 yards. Walpock rushed for over 200 yards as a team, and the defense held Shawnee to just 101 total yards of offense. The offense from Shawnee is rolling. Yeah, Shawnee Indians offense right now really struggling to get going. They are in the most difficult part, the growing part of their schedule.
We talked about that all year.
And so it's just one of those things. They still have St. Mary's to come next week, and they are going to have a new quarterback. It does sound like they're going to be without their starter for probably the rest of the season. But we'll talk a little bit more about that when we preview next week's game. But we'll see if the Indians can get their offense going and get things turned around. Moving on, Defiance and Kenton, the high-scoring affair, man. I'll tell you what, Defiance moved into a tie for second in the conference after knocking off Kenton 34-27. This is the third straight one-score loss for Kenton. The Wildcats, they're playing inspired football. It's just the defense right now not coming up with stops when they need it. Both offenses, they got off to a good start, specifically in that second quarter where they combined for over 500 yards of total offense. Everybody else might have been struggling, but these two teams figured it out, and they got after it very, very quickly. In the second half, Defiance's defense, they really stepped up, only gave up 1 score, which was an 8-yard touchdown to Zane Perkins in the fourth quarter. Brett Zipfeld, he has been nursing a knee injury all year, and he had his best game of the season. He was 9 of 13, 222 yards, and 3 touchdowns.
Man, throwing it all over and running it.
Anthony Wild, he rushed 15 times for 137 yards and a touchdown, while Noah Gomez ran 14 times for 75. Yeah, he does. He's automatic. Gomez had 75 yards and 2 touchdowns. Brady Borton, not a name that we have said very often. He had 4 catches for 90 yards and a touchdown. Brady. And a new name, Kelton Gibbs, somebody that we haven't mentioned yet this season. He had 2 catches for 79 yards and a touchdown for Defiance. For Kenton, Corbin Johnson, he's just done what he has been doing all season long. He was 20 of 30. He threw the ball 30 times Friday night in the elements, Matt.
Not scared.
190 yards, 3 touchdowns. He also added a rushing touchdown. Grady Clayman Beasley ran 15 times for 55 yards, caught 5 passes for 66 yards and a touchdown, while the freshman Maddox McFarland had 5 catches for 56 yards. We talked about Salina. Elida, they snapped their 4-game losing streak in the win. For some reason, teams continue to make the colossal mistake of kicking Amari Wash the football. As for the second straight week, he had a kickoff return for a touchdown. This time, it went for 85 yards.
Electric.
Amari also scored the other Elida touchdown. He had an 18-yard reception from Ryan Magoo, who was 5 of 16 for 88 yards and a touchdown. And as we mentioned, they won that one late in the fourth quarter on a field goal to get a much-needed victory for the Bulldogs.
All right, man, let's head over to the MAC. We got Marion Local 6-0. They took care of Versailles 48-0. Everybody kind of assumed maybe this one would be a little bit closer, but it wasn't.
It was 41-0 at half.
Yeah, Justin Knopf passed for 2 TDs. He ran for 87 yards on 1 run in the first half. For dirt, finishing with 183 yards rushing. He was 7 for 11 for 143 for the game. His favorite target, Victor Holschler, he had 111 yards on 4 catches. Versailles only mustered 61 yards, so not a lot of stats there for Wilker and company. They've pretty much done what they've done, right? Marion here's load it up, knock them down.
Here's the thing I wanted to ask you, because I've had this conversation with some other people, and it came up again Friday night after this game. Marion Local, I think this was 55 straight for them, I believe. They are knocking on the doorstep of that Delphus St. John's all-time record. They have the longest win streak in the country. All the things that we know, right?
You know what that means, right?
Phenomenal. What's that?
Those dudes that are seniors, that means they've never lost.
Yeah, it's crazy. Can you imagine going through high school and be like, what's a loss? I don't know.
It's serious.
Is this the best Marion Local team?
I mean,
ever?
You'd have to talk to somebody who's paid way more attention than me. I have no idea.
I mean, the fact that you're even talking about American is just
well, you have to talk about a private. When you talk best team over there, you probably got to talk classes. I mean, that's where you really delineate yourself. I mean, they probably have teams that are debated and very vaguely, right? Like, hey, how many rings you got? I got 4.
Well, yeah, but I mean, and you're not wrong, but it's also, I think this year's team, if things continue in this way that they're continuing, they're not winning games closely. No one's challenging them. When you look at them, there is no weakness. What are you going to attack? Normally you can say, well, if we can, we'll attack this side of the field, or we attack their linebackers, or we attack this, or we attack this. There is not a single spot, at least up to this point, where anybody has said, here's the weakness of this team. They are good at quarterback, receiver, running back, O-line, D-line, linebacker, safety.
The only thing I've got for you on this conversation, and I know this is probably very debatable, but my take on this is, if you win, you got to have the Indiana rule, right? Where if you win consistently, you go up, and you go up till you lose. That's my take on that. But, I mean, that's the only way that you get this to kind of even itself out at some point.
I mean, I'm not even worried about it evening out. I just think what we're seeing out of this Flyer team this year may be the best team that's ever come out of there. And you're talking about the most prolific program in the state of Ohio over, however many years we've been playing high school football.
Go grab a beer down there and talk to somebody, because I have not enough knowledge on that. Let's move over to Delphus St. John's versus Annis. Anna, they headed over to Champions Field, and Osborne had all 5 of the TDs. Anna rolled in this one, 162 on the ground, 213 in the air for Shappy. Osborne was also able to catch 6 receptions for 102 yards. Shappy threw for 213, had two INTs. Not a bunch of stats when you don't put it up, kind of like we talked about with these other teams that have gotten shut out. All Coach Schulte stressed was the need to just increase consistent play. The next game up, we have New Bremen and Fort Recovery. Wow. Boy, what a game here. I mean, this thing was tight.
I don't think anybody saw this one being this close. This was crazy.
New Bremen led 14-6 at half. Fort Recovery ended up going for 2 in the second half and just fell short of making it to tie the game. Fort Recovery, Caden Grease was 7 for, actually, I think that's New Bremen, right? No, I don't know. Maybe that's not. I'm sorry about this. All right, Caden Grease, that is I'm working, bro. I don't have great notes. There was a little bit of copy and paste caught right there, friends of the show. But Fort Recovery, Caden Grease was 7 for 13, 45 yards and a TD, 9 carries for 44 yards. Reese Wendell, 37 carries, 124 yards and a TD. Gavin Evers had 2 catches for 8 yards and a TD. New Bremen has, let's see, Gavin Dickey was 3 for 8 for 70 yards and a TD and an INT. Rogan Muther had 16 carries for 99 yards and a TD. Grant Dickey had 1 catch for 57 yards and a TD. The one thing I can highlight from here is the New Bremen coach was really, I want to say, almost like shocked at how well Fort Recovery had game planned for them. He gave a lot of credit to the Fort Recovery coaching staff, and really thought that they got away with one here. Coldwater versus Parkway. This one was a roll. Coldwater outgained Parkway 267 yards to 33.
Yikes.
Balin Brockberger had 8 rushes for 64 yards. Braxton Taylor, 5 rushes for 43 yards and 2 TDs. Miles Potcotter had 8 rushes for 40 yards and 2 TDs. Ethan Elander had an 83-yard kick return.
Man, kickoff returns are becoming a big thing around here, man.
I was a little slippery there. I was surprised we didn't see a couple more big returns. The other interesting was the punts. We had a punt that like literally looked like it was heading out of bounds, and it looked like my drive, and it just all of a sudden caught wind, and it just took off the other way. It was unbelievable. But anyway, let's go now. Minster St. Henry. Win and field position was the name of the game. Minster held St. Henry, who chose not to punt on their first possession. All right, so they choose not to punt. St. Henry's like, I'm not kicking into the wind. The coach talked about it, and so they go for it. They get held, and then that gives a short field. All right, so there you go. You're down 6, and they miss the extra point. Both teams battle in the second half, and win comes into play again as Minster threw a ball that was determined to be a lateral as it got held up by the wind, and St. Henry scooped it up and then got a short field and took it in and scored. QB Whirling, I did see, was hurt on that scoring drive.
That's a big deal for St. Henry.
Yep. So the freshman Landon Schwartz comes in, and 4th and 22, he throws. That's how they scored. Sorry, I messed that up. On 4th and 22, they get that score to make it 12-7. Again, St. Henry pinned in their own territory under 2 minutes. This time they do punt 18 yards. Minster had thrown only once, so we got a tie ball game at this point, but they got a PI call. So with 20 seconds to go, no timeouts, inside the 30, Steffi throws another ball to Heitkamp, who breaks a tackle and gets the zone. They said no time on the clock.
Oh, man.
So he catches it short, breaks 2 tackles, and scores.
That's incredible.
Steffi finished for 139 yards on 29 carries, and I mean, can you imagine the drama and just everything?
No, that's insane.
I mean, reading it, I was like just getting excited reading about it. So that wraps up our MAC recap.
All right, we're going to move on to the NWCC, where you're going to notice a theme in these games. They are going to be very one-sided recaps. This is a stat that I mean, it's an incredible stat. At least for one half of the league, it's pretty cool.
Yeah, go ahead.
So winning teams, they outscored the losing teams this week across the entire conference, 155-0.
So you posted this on Facebook, and I was out of town, and I get a text from a friend of the program, and I had to keep rereading it because they're like, "Hey, nice job on that stat. That's a really cool stat." And I'm like, I read it, and I'm like, understand. And I read it through his text.
Oh, okay.
So then I finally popped on and I was like, all right, now I got it. But I mean, when I read it, I was like, what is this preposterous thing? What did Nate do?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. So I sat down, we prepping over the weekend, and I always put all the scores in, so we at least have that as a reference. And I'm going through and I'm looking at, I'm like, well, that was shutout. I was like, oh, shutout. I'm like, there's no way. I went back and checked it. Wow. And I couldn't believe it. There's got to be some sort of record there. I couldn't, but that's why I put it on social media, because I think it's such an incredible, weird, outlying stat. If you played an NWCC game and your team scored a point, they won. It's just that simple. So Perry, they took on North Baltimore. Perry outgained North Baltimore 334 yards, to 63. Isaiah McFadden had 34 rushes for 182 yards and a touchdown, along with a 93-yard kickoff return for a TD. Kamari Glenn, 7 rushes for 157 yards and 2 touchdowns. They win 34-0. Waynesfield Goshen, they extended that losing streak for Corey Rawson. It is now 5 straight. Waynesfield Goshen, they've now won back-to-back games after losing 2 straight. They come away with the 24-0 victory. The game of the week in the NWCC, 2 undefeated conference foes, the Upper Scioto Valley Rams against the Ridgemont Gophers. USV, they stay undefeated as they are on a collision course with Hardin Northern.
Yes, they are.
As they gave Ridgemont their first conference loss of the season. This one was scoreless into the fourth quarter.
Wow.
0-0 game into the fourth quarter. That's when Ryan Roberts finally got into the end zone on a 3-yard rushing touchdown. The defense did the rest of the work. I was so happy the defense got some love, because we talk about this week in and week out. We don't get to talk about defense enough. Defensive back Hunter Damron, he had a 41-yard pick 6, and defensive lineman Michael Ellebrock had a 26-yard scoop and score.
Get it, big boy.
Ridgemont actually outgained USV 147-114.
Spicy stat.
And all of the offensive yards in this game were on the ground. Not one passing yard from either team. USV comes away with the 20-0 victory. As we mentioned, Hardin Northern, they seem to be destined for a matchup with USV. They win 42-0. Nolan Hobson just continues to be an unstoppable machine carrying the football. He amassed 271 yards on the ground. As a team, Hardin Northern only had 296 offensive yards. He had 271 of the team's 296 offensive yards, all of them on the ground as well. Hobson had 35 carries, 5 touchdowns. Xander Wilson's the only other person who got any sort of offense for the Polar Bears. He ran in one of their other touchdowns to make that the 42-0 final. And then Elgin, they fall. They lost 35-0, and they fall to 500 after a pretty promising start.
Let's move over to Lima Senior. Lima Senior stays undefeated. They were at Toledo Woodward. Janias Hall continued to put up those big numbers, man. 472 yards, 8 TDs. Boog Wilson had 165 yards and 3 TDs. Hall is thrown for over 300 yards in every game this season. Yeah, that's a big stat, bro. Yeah. And he's first in the country, 2,814 yards.
Hey, the other big deal about this game and these numbers that make them even that much more impressive, and I just found this out today. I was talking to somebody. They started a running clock in the second quarter, not in the second half. The coaches were like, hey, do you just want to go? Yep. So they had a running clock for 3 out of the 4 quarters, and they still put up these kind of numbers.
Way to go, Spartans.
Incredible. The Bulldogs of Ada, they continue to look absolutely at home inside that BBC. Turns out this might have been a great move for Ada, leaving the NWC and heading up to the Blanchard Valley Conference. Levi Green had another big game, accounting for 240 total yards of offense. He got 103 of those on the ground and 2 touchdowns. He was 9 of 12 for 137 yards and a touchdown in the air. Kane Fisher, 9 carries for 86 yards and 1 touchdown as they knocked off Arcadia 36-6. And then to wrap up our teams, Findlay, they took on Springfield. They leaned heavy into the run game. They totaled over 300 yards of rushing. Griffin Lane had 100 yards and a TD to go along with Landon Eccleberry, who had 75 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Eccleberry, 9 of 9, perfect throwing the ball.
9 times.
120 yards, 2 touchdowns. They get the big win, 42-13. Time to take a look at our...
I got service, bro. My Verizon's working.
But huge outage across the country today.
For those of you who have not had service today, we are engaged in technically trying to fix it for you. And I can't wait to see how my phone just shuts down now because I'm going to have all the crap that's uploaded.
Time to move on to Player of the Week.
Stay ready.
You took the easy way out this week. You took the absolute no-brainer because I think if we could have both agreed and would just give it to one player, he would have won going away.
Well, somebody got into the sheet earlier than the other guy. I got that credit. I was struggling to find like where that part of the sheet was because I really wanted to give love to Trent Barraza. Obviously, 25 carries, 308 yards, 4 TDs. You're getting some cotton from the Varsity Locker Room podcast for the season, Nate. This puts him over 1,000 yards. He's averaging 9.9 yards per carry.
Unbelievable.
13 TDs this year, and Grove is actually second in the conference in rushing this year. Great player, well-deserving. Congratulations, young man. You're a stud.
So I kind of went a different way than what we have been. I went a little bit farther east than we typically go with these, but I had to finally give some love to Hardin Northern running back Nolan Hobson. He has been incredible all year long, and this past week, as we just mentioned, he had 271 rushing yards. That was 98% of the team's offense, as they only had 296 yards total as a team. He added 5 touchdowns. He has run for over 200 yards in 3 of the last 4 games. And in the 4th game, he had 199 yards.
Bam.
He is second in Ohio and 11th in the country in rushing with 1,239 yards. He is first in Ohio in total points with 147. And he is tied for first in total TDs with 21. One of the best running backs in the entire state is over in Dola. And people need to go check him out if they can.
Love it.
So congratulations to our players of the week. We're getting a little behind on trying to get these T-shirts out to guys. We have some guys. It's been hard because we don't want to throw them in the mail. We want to get them over to the schools, and we got guys all over the place. So one of these days we're just gonna get in the car and drive them and
we'll trip it.
But don't worry, we have them. We have them for everybody. We promise you will get your shirts. We're gonna get these out to everybody just as soon as we can.
Well, what's coming up on week 7?
That's right. Time to hit the previews.
Dude, here we go. Grove versus Fort Loramie. Grove is a heavy favorite in this game. Barraza's obviously, we just talked about him, but they got a new quarterback, so I'm sure Fort Loramie is going to try to do whatever they can to stack the box and take Barraza away. This is the first time these two teams have ever played. Look that up. That's opening.
Anytime that teams that are this close, like we've had that happen a couple of times, it's always been a shock. Like, how do these guys avoid each other?
The Fort Loramie is going to rely on Hart and company to lead them through the air. He's leading the conference with 1,400 yards and some change. He's 16 TDs throwing. I think the key for this one is, can Fort Loramie get stops, and can they not turn it over? Next up, Bluffton at Crestview. Bluffton's going to head over to Van Wert County and play Crestview team, who is a significant underdog on paper. I was reading a little bit about Crestview's game, and the coach said they've got a really young offensive line. I'll tell you what, that's going to get tested. Bluffton puts a lot of pressure. They will stack the box, and they will try to make this young quarterback basically carry it on his shoulders. I really think that's what they did to LCC, and I think the weather kind of helped with that, but I don't think they're going to change their mantra. They want to dictate pressure, and it could be a long night for Crestview if they're not prepared to get the ball out of their hands quickly. LCC looking to bounce back. They got Delphus Jefferson. Again, heavy favorite here. Hopefully, Quatman could get back from his limited play that he had last year with his ankle injury. T-Bird struggled on both sides of the ball. I think for them, they've got to figure something out with the line. The Baldoff, the McKee brothers, Sirkovich, Malcolm, they've got to continue to grow, and they've got to continue to create holes. On the other side, the linebackers, it was an issue. They've got to figure out Falky, Purnell, Hefner. By the way, give a little shout out to that kid. He's playing through a really tough shoulder injury, constantly just freaking throwing his body in there and playing as hard as he can. But these guys are going to have to start to continue to grow if they want to make the run that they have, on the paper that they put as their goals for the end of the season. Jefferson is led by Agner, and Coach Pullman, talked about it. We talked about it, Nate. They just have to continue to grow. Overall, Delphus owns a 7-game advantage in this series over the 27 years these teams have played. Allen East at Spencerville, sophomore you talked about on Keegan Jones. He'll head over to Bearcat country as they are a 13-point favorite. Allen East has lost, however, 3 of the last 4 games, and they need to get a victory if they want to get themselves rolling into the postseason. Spencerville, led by quarterback Carter Orr, kind of the same boat. Had some wins early, and they're struggling. So both teams really need to get the 6 wins and guarantee themselves, actually, I kind of said that wrong. 4 is going to get Spencerville's in. So
yeah, I think that will. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this one, I'm gonna circle back on this one in a future segment.
All right. Moving on to the Western Buckeye League. The Elida Bulldogs 2-4 overall, 1-4 in the conference.
This is a dog battle.
Yeah, it is. They're going to travel over to Defiance. Defiance 4-2 overall, 4-1 in the Western Buckeye League. This is the Battle of the Bulldogs Part 2. Elida won the first matchup against Salina last week, and now they got to go and face the other Bulldog team. But this time they're going to Defiance. Elida had 2 very different games over the last 2 weeks. They lost a game where they scored 56 points, and they won a game where they only scored 17. They're going to really need both sides of the ball playing well this week as they take on a Defiance team that has scored 30 or more in 4 of their 6 games. Elida leads this all-time series 29-22, and they've won 8 of the last 10, including a 19-18 victory last season. I think a lot of people would have considered an upset, especially since that Elida team had lost their starting quarterback at that point and were reeling a little bit. Elida has been led by Amari Walsh this season, who continues to lead the Western Buckeye League in all-purpose yards and has been a game changer in that kick return. Like you said, just stop kicking him the ball. I don't know why teams are making the mistake of putting the ball in his hands. Don't do it. On the other side, Defiance has been leaning on their run game for most of the season, led primarily by Anthony Wilder.
He runs wild.
He is second in the WBL in rushing with 769 yards and 6 touchdowns. Brez Zitveld, he injured his knee at the beginning of the season like we talked about, but he is coming off of his best game. And if he gets things going, that's going to give this Defiance team a whole different dynamic, and people really need to watch out if the passing game is catching up to that.
On this one.
So moving on, the Canton Wildcats 1-5 overall, 1-4 in the WBL. They are going to take on the Wapakoneta Redskins, undefeated, 6-0 overall, 5-0 in the conference. They sit up top the Western Buckeye League heading into this matchup. Kenton has lost the last 3 games by 1 score and has scored 27 or more points in every game this season except for 1. The Wildcats are number 1 in the league with over 480 yards of offense per game. But they are going up against the top defense, or scoring defense at least, who they are giving up less than 14 points per game. I saw it in person. They fly to the ball. They cause havoc. They are a phenomenal defense over there in Wapak. It's easy to see why not a lot of teams are able to get points on them. Meanwhile, Wapak, they are scoring 34 points a game, and you got a Kenton defense that's reeling a little bit. They give up over 30 a game. Something's going to have to give here. This Kenton defense is going to have to find a way to get some stops to give themselves a chance. Wapak leads this series 28-24. Kenton has only won 3 games against them since 2012, and they are currently on a 4-game losing streak in this series. This one, one of the highlights is going to be the two of the best quarterbacks in the entire conference, Corbin Johnson and Caleb Moyer. They sit 1 and 2 in the Western Buckeye League in TD passes, QB rating, and completion percentage. Corbin is leading the league in passing yards. Caleb, he is at number 3. However, the big difference there is Caleb Moyer has 50 less attempts than Corbin does. Caleb, probably easily the most efficient quarterback in the entire Western Buckeye League. Should be a great matchup. The road doesn't get any easier for the Indians coming off of that loss to Wapak. They are 2-4 overall, 1-4 in the conference. They are going to be taking on the St. Mary's Rough Riders, 4-2 overall, 3-2 in the Western Buckeye League. And as much as it pains me, this one could be a spotlight game for St. Mary's, as it is a matchup between the top rushing offense and a defense that gives up over 200 yards on the ground a game. St. Mary's, they lead this series 32-10 and have won 9 in a row against the Indians. Like we mentioned, they lost their starting quarterback, and they're going to turn to senior Caleb Bacon. Bacon was a starter last season through the first 4 games.
He's got some experience.
Yeah, he's got some familiarity with all these receivers, and he's going to look to get this offense jump-started. It has only scored a combined 10 points in the last 3 games. They got off to a good start. They were putting points on the board, but the last 3 games, it's gotten difficult. The defense will have to find some way to slow down that 3-headed monster that is Dominic Osborne, Caleb Schmidt, and Colton Mabry. Ottawa Glandorf against Van Wert. OG comes in 3-3 overall, 3-2 in the Western Buckeye League. Van Wert 1-5 overall. They're still looking for their first conference win. They're going to try to match their defensive effort from week 6. Is Ottawa Glandorf, as they're coming off the shutout of Bath. They had Van Wert had a strong defensive game as well. Like we'd mentioned, it was 14-14 there going into the locker rooms at halftime, but things got away from him in that second half. This makes 4 straight weeks that the Van Wert Cougars have scored 14 points. They somehow just can't get over that 14-point hump. Briston Wise continues to lead the Western Buckeye League in rushing after his best game on the ground so far. The pass game has surprisingly been struggling, though. That has been the strength of that Cougar team for a lot of years, and right now they just can't quite seem to get it back on track. They're going to try this week. Ottawa Glandorf, though, they are the top defensive team in the league. They do not give up a lot of yards.
Let's head over to the MAC, right?
Yep.
All right. I got Marion Local heading over to Fort Recovery. We've talked enough about Marion Local, I think, to let you know that they are balanced on the run and in the air. Their quarterbacks,
they're good at football.
Yeah, they're pretty good. They're pretty good. Knauf is he's in the top 5 in throwing yards. They got the leading receiver. They do a rushing by committee. The Indians, however, are led by Reese Wendell, who leads the conference in rushing yards. Fort Recovery does not throw the ball very often, so excuse me. This is going to be a very quick game, I got a feeling, without the ball being thrown. Anna, at Versailles, we kicked this one around as a possibility of game of the week.
Yeah, it should be a great one.
Anna's coming in after a huge win against Delphos St. John's. Osborne's leading rushing tack for Anna Rockets, and QB Shappy is, second in the league in passing. Anna's predicted to win this one, Nate, by 2. And so that basically means it's a pick 'em. Versailles will look to get the losing taste out of their mouth after they just got finished playing Marion Local. For Versailles, I think the key for this is to get stops. Anything over 35 points, I got Anna. That's what I'm saying. And for my little insight for you listeners out there. St. Henry at Parkway. I don't know what the story is with Whirling. He was second in the league in rushing. He left with an injury. I don't know if he'll be back or not. That's going to be a big deal. St. Henry's a heavy favorite on paper. However, the Panthers still play hard. I'll tell you what, they just got to put 2 halves together. Panthers quarterback is QB is at 5th in the conference for passing yards. Bruns, I think, is his name. So shout out to him. Just keep putting it together, fellas. Keep working hard in practice, and let's see if it pays off this week. New Bremen 4-2 versus Minster, who is 5-1. Minster is a heavy favorite in this backyard rivalry. I'm pretty sure, Nate, if they turn the lights on at the stadium in each other's towns, they can see it. So,
you're not that much wrong. I've been at both these stadiums a lot, and they're awfully close to each other.
The only reason I think about it is whenever I'm going that way, I never get to go any faster because I feel like I'm still in one town. I don't know how they have 2 schools, but whatever. Anyway, Minster has won, catch this, 40 times out of 53 years. That's in 72, by the way. Do it all QB. Steffi is top 5 in rushing and in throwing in the conference. New Bremen is led by QB Rogan Muthier, who is 4th in the conference right behind Steffi. New Bremen is going to have to score to make this game close. That's my opinion. If they can't, they've been hanging right around 14, 21, something like that. You don't put up more points than that, you're going to have a tough time beating Minster.
Definitely.
Coldwater 6-0 versus St. John's. Coldwater heads into Delphus. They're beginning the second half of their season. Blackburn and company, I think they're just going to continue to do what they do. The Blue Jays really are going to have to get stops. I'll keep saying that because I think it's going to be a key in some of these teams just have their offenses clicking, and if you can't get a stop, I just don't know how you can hang. That's going to be a key for St. John's.
All right, moving on to the NWCC. Perry is going to travel to Corey Rawson. Corey Rawson still looking for their first conference win, and Perry's going to look to build on their shutout. Corey Rawson, they continue to struggle ever since that week 1 victory. We'll see if they can get things turned around, but the Commodores playing a lot better football here lately. I imagine they're going to keep things rolling this week. Waynesfield Goshen against Elgin. Waynesfield 4-2 overall, 2-2 in the conference. Elgin 3-3 and 3-1 in conference play. Waynesfield looking to make it 3 in a row and stay alive in that NWCC race. And I'm sure Elgin knows that they cannot afford another conference loss if they want to keep their conference title hopes alive. USV, they're going to get a week off from the NWCC as they're going to play an out-of-conference game. And you got to imagine that, they're going to take Dayton Christian seriously. That's who they have this week, but they are heavy favorites in that game. And I'd imagine they're going to keep one eye on that Hardin Northern Ridgemont game because they know that Hardin Northern game is coming very, very quickly. If Hardin Northern can knock off Ridgemont after Ridgemont suffered their first conference defeat last week, that's going to lead just USV and Hardin Northern atop the NWCC. We'll see what happens.
What happens next?
Yep, Nolan Hobson will look to keep them there using his legs. That's the thing about Hardin Northern. You know what they're going to do. You know who you have to stop. And it's like we talk about Trenton Braza. You just can't do it. It's just they are so effective in what they're doing. Coach Cooper has them going on the backs of Nolan Hobson. Excited to see how that one plays out. And then to wrap up the NWCC, Ridgedale still looking for that first conference win, as in North Baltimore. One of them will get it this week as Ridgedale travels to North Baltimore.
Yep, we got homecoming week for the Spartans as they welcome Toledo Rogers. Lima Seniors just going to try to continue to throw it all the time. Put pressure on with points. And Janias Hall in the offense as Boog, Khalik, Kenyon Smith, they'll continue to march their way into an undefeated season.
Yeah, if they can win this week, they're going to move to 7-0 for just the second time since 1972. They're starting to get in a rare air here at Lima Senior.
It's awesome.
Ada looks to keep things going in the Blanchard Valley Conference. Levi Green continues to look better and better each and every week. Ada is a huge favorite as they are favored by 32 over Riverdale this week. Ada currently tied for second in the conference. A big week for the Bulldogs, and I think we're going to have a chance to talk to Levi Green. We've been interviewing players, and I reached out to him, hoping to have him on, talk about his season and Ada and this turnaround they have compared to maybe the last couple of years over there for the Bulldogs. And then Findlay, they are going to have to – they leaned – wait, I don't know. English is difficult. This is a Monday, folks. I apologize. But a week after leaning very heavy on the run game, they're going to have to face a huge test in Anthony Wayne. Anthony Wayne comes in undefeated. Findlay, they are going to be a large underdog in this one. Freshman
Landon was spinning it.
I know. Freshman QB Landon Eccleberry has looked good. He has done a nice job filling in for Ryan Montgomery, but they're going to need to have for him to have another massive game if they want to keep up with Anthony Wayne. And that is our Week 7 preview, man. A lot of big games. I expect a lot of big performances, and it's going to be a beautiful Friday night. I can't wait to see what happens.
Oh, let's go to Picks of the Week. HB Enterprise.
I don't want to. Can we skip
Enterprise
this?
Is your go-to source for residential rentals. Man, let me start. HB Enterprise is your go-to source for residential rentals. HB Enterprise understands the perfect home is more about the four walls and the roof. It's about discovering a place you truly feel at home.
Dude, why are we struggling talking
it's
so much this week, man?
It's not. We're doing fine. I disagree with you totally. We've had way worse weeks.
Oh, man.
All right, bro. Well, let's see what happened. Last week, I finally got a victory. And unlike you, I won't talk a bunch of trash. I'll just take my victory and move on because that's not how I'm built.
Whatever. I would. I went 0-3. I wouldn't stop throwing. I did win one?
Yes.
Oh, that's right. Whatever. either way, you beat me. It was frustrating.
Yeah.
It was a tough week, but I'll bounce back this week. I still got the lead. I still up 3 on you overall. Overall, I'm 11-7. You're 8-10. We got a few more weeks left to go.
We highlight these just because we like to look at the spreads and we like to talk a little bit about these teams. So do you want me to go first?
Yeah, man, go ahead. Go ahead.
All right, so let's see. You've got me Ridgemont at Hardin Northern.
Yep. Hardin Northern, an 8-point favorite here.
I'm going to take Hardin Northern. I'm going to take with a running game. Let's see if Hobson can go get himself another, half dozen TDs. Mm-hmm. And this one is an interesting pick here. Elida getting 29. 29. Huge. That's a large spread at Defiance. However, we know that how Defiance is starting to put things together, starting to roll. And Elida's they've been inconsistent, to be honest with you.
They have been. Yep,
they've had some that's a huge win last week. Big boost for the program. And then they've had some weeks where they're kind of, so let's keep that momentum rolling. Bulldogs, I'm staying with you. You're going to cover the 29 or even go get a victory if you feel like it's your day. This one, I actually am going to talk about this in depth a little more in the next segment, but I'm taking Spencerville plus 13 against Allen East.
All right, looking at what you got up here for me, let's see. USV minus 31 against Dayton Christian. That's just too many points for me. USV spends a lot of time running. Dayton Christian, it's hard. I don't know a ton about them. They have a decent record. I just think 31 is a lot of points. I'm actually going to go with Dayton Christian. I think USV wins this one, but I do wonder if Upper Scioto gets caught looking ahead a little bit, looking past Dayton Christian. So Dayton Christian, give me them and the points. Parkway, this one's just not fair, man. Parkway plus 35 against St. Henry. It's Monday. We have no idea if Whirling is going to play or not. If Whirling playing changes this whole thing, all right, and I can't put a caveat into this, so I am going to make this pick assuming that Whirling isn't playing. So give me Parkway plus the 35.
Take the Panthers and the points.
Right. And then third one, OG minus 24 against Van Wert. Here's my rationale. I'm taking Van Wert, all right, but here's the reason why. Van Wert, 4 straight weeks of 14 points, all right? Even if they just get to their 14-point threshold, that's a lot of points that OG has to score to cover this one at 24. I don't think that they can get there in the game. I think they win this one, but I do think that Van Wert covers, so give me Van Wert. So Dayton Christian, Parkway, Van Wert, those are my picks. I'm going to get back on the right side and have a winning record this week. I can feel it.
There you go.
Feel it. All right, moving on. Upset surprise prediction of the week. It is brought to you by the Healthy Kids Running Series in Lima. They are a national nonprofit organization that engages communities and families by providing an inclusive youth running experience for kids 2 to 14 years old while inspiring them to believe in themselves and lead an active and healthy lifestyle. To find more information, follow their Facebook page, Healthy Kids Running Series Lima OH, or email limaoh@healthykidsrs.com.
Drilled it.
Yep, and they actually began their latest fall series yesterday on Sunday. I had my 6-year-old out there. He went out there and ran. There's a funny picture
Where
they got. They're down at Froat Park. They run in the bowl. They got like 5 different courses that, short distances for kids, longer for some of the older ones. It was a rainy day, but the kids were having a lot of fun. They have a ton of momentum behind them, a lot of sponsors. It's a great thing. There's still plenty of time. If you want to participate, get your kids signed out, come out, have a good time. You don't want to miss that.
These are those things in Lima that I'm really proud of these guys supporting us, but that we can hopefully get some more people aware of what's going on. That's pretty cool.
Absolutely. All right, so
I'm jumping off, bro. I'm
gonna go first. I just want to give us some props, and we have not done well this week or this year overall with our predictions. Our surprises haven't gone super well. Last week we both nailed ours though. Elida and Kenton. Our predictions both came true. Hey, a little pat on the back for ourselves this time. Yeah,
maybe some homework pays off. Well, I'm going to try to keep that rolling. I got Spencerville as my surprise of the week as we move towards the end of the season. They really got to get back on the winning track. They scored 21 points in the second half when they were down 35-0. Could have gave up. They did not pick their heads up, put their nose back in their helmets, and freaking went out and scored 21 points. I just don't think 2 touchdown deficit. It's homecoming over there at the Bearcat country. They got that beautiful field. It's when that sunset goes down and you're over there, it is just a fabulous place to be for a football night. Bearcats homecoming. I'm taking it. That's my prediction.
All right. So I had luck in the WBL last week, so I'm going to stay in the WBL this week. And I'm actually going to piggyback a little bit off of your pick from last week because you picked Elida in Salina, and I'm going to go with Elida again. I really like what I'm seeing out of them the last 2 weeks. They faced a Defiance team that they were able to upset last year. Elida leads the all-time series, and they are 12-3 since 2009 against Defiance. In the 3 losses that Elida has over that same time period, they have lost by a combined 26 points, okay? That is less than what they're predicted to lose by this week. Right now, they're a plus 29 right now. They've only lost their 3 games against Defiance by a combined 26 points. All right? For some reason, Defiance seems to be a team that Elida has figured out. I expect this one to be a lot closer than predicted. I look for this one to stay close, and I even think that Elida is going to have an opportunity to walk away with a win on this one. And a little bit of bonus prediction, I think Amari Walsh makes it 3 weeks in a row. I think he returns another kickoff return.
No way. You're not kicking it to him.
I guarantee you that they will make that mistake. Amari ends up with the ball in his hands. He goes for 3 straight weeks for a kickoff return for a TD.
There you go. All right. Good call, bad call. Officiating feedback of the week. This is brought to you by MacQ Properties, serving Allen County and the surrounding counties since 2006. The best view is with MacQ.
Pow!
Pow. That's what we're doing. All right. So, as you guys know, we have spent a ton of time on this, and we're going to continue to stay with it. We want to wrap your head around the new information that we're kind of getting.
And that's why we're staying with it. We talked about this.
It really is intriguing. I mean,
we got some feedback. We learned something new. So, hey, look, let's follow up with it and fill everybody in.
So, pow. That's the call that the officials make when they are deciding whether or not it is a defenseless receiver.
And when we posted this way back in week 2, right after the week 1 games, you pointed out, somebody had put pow. We didn't know what that meant, but we have since figured it out.
So it is play the ball for P. O is open hands. All right, which I started thinking about that more. What does that mean? Like
you're push.
Okay.
Like you can push.
But you can't punch them?
You can punch them.
Like you can push. Stuff that they miss, are you really telling me they're going to... Anyway, so you got to have open hands.
Yep.
And then you have to wrap up. Right. And I think that means that you are using your arms, not just totally destroying with your shoulder.
Absolutely. Yeah. I had a chance to talk to Jim Epperly during another podcast that I do. And he this is what he said. They teach the officials pow. And it made a lot of sense, especially in the games that you and I have looked at where defenseless receivers come into play. And it actually happened Friday night over in Walpock. And it was, I mean, it's not funny, but I mean, it was one of those things where it happened and I immediately thought, pow. And I'm like, they need to throw the flag here because he didn't play the ball.
And you said they didn't initially.
Because they didn't initially, but he didn't play the ball. He didn't approach him with open hands and he didn't try to wrap up. They did get together. They talked about it. They dropped the flag, defenseless receiver.
So, and I really think that as this continues to be enforced, one of the things that this is really highlighting for me, and this is a concern I have for high school football, is what are we doing as we're trying to stay current with this stuff? Because one of the things that they don't talk about is the crown of the helmet. And I will tell you right now, the thing that I've seen with my sons playing for the last, Matthews in his senior year, there are coaches that basically lead. They teach with lead with the head. Okay. Yeah. And that's what I really struggle with. And that's not a part of this. Now, I know I'm probably going to hear feedback or, I know the reality is that's probably just a personal foul, but it really, for me, is most accentuated on these pass plays where people bury their head. And I'll be honest with you, maybe they're not teaching it. Maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe just kids, you know how it is. Kids get scared. They put their head down. They close their eyes.
100%.
When you close your eyes, you're naturally going to drop your head. So maybe it's not being taught that way. But I just hope to keep that emphasis also, keeping the head out of the play. That's a big deal for me because I've watched a lot of kids take a lot of contact. And I don't mean the contact of football. I'm not trying to, you constantly hear about how we're changing the game. It's not as physical as it used to be. I'm talking about keeping your head out of it. Right. And that's where I struggle with this one with the open hands and the wrapping up. Although I think that is definitely more similar to what the college and the pro game looks like.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I think that's where they're trying to mimic that. And I just hope they continue to, do their best and review. You know, I was very happy to hear when you were talking about the stuff that you said, is that they actually are having these conversations and reviewing it. And I think you instead they used the clip as a conversation piece.
The same clip that we shared, that I got shared a lot over social media. They said that they used that exact clip in their officiating meeting with everybody and said, hey, this is defenseless receiver. This is why. Like, it's the example. So they do get together, and, you know, next time you're at a game and, you know, you see a hit, say to yourself, pow, pow, pow. All right, buddy. Another great show this week. I can't wait for week 7. Friday night is going to be a beautiful night. If you got nothing to do, you got nowhere to be, find yourself
lots of good action. We gave you good action. You go get out there and have some fun. Hey, it's winding down. That's the scary part too, people.
It is, man. Playoffs are coming, man. They are coming quick.
It is unbelievable how fast it's going.
For sure. So, all right, don't forget to go and check us out on all of our socials. You can find us on Facebook. We're on Instagram. We're on the X. We are also on YouTube now, too. So go out there, check us out. Find us in all sorts of places. We appreciate everybody's support, as always. Hey, buddy, another great show. I hope you have a good week.
Good job, you too, man.
Thanks for joining us inside the Varsity Locker Room.